Okay, well, we are here, as it were. Just give me half a second. I just got to call one more thing up. And that's what we're looking for there, we think. Yep. That should be right. Of course not. There, that's probably what we're looking for. There we go. Don't mind me, I'm still trying to figure out how to get this to actually work properly. So bear with me and we'll figure it out together. Well, maybe. Okay, just calling my own live feed up. And because it's easier, I'm just going to move it down here. Don't know which screen is best. But I am here again. And, let's do one little detail here. Nothing like being a little scattered. And I don't know why my volume is screwy. I may have a problem with this, but I'm going to see what I can do with it because I used to have good volume. I've added an extra monitor, and that may be the problem. Because from my end, it does look like, where are we here? Whoop. Oh, there we are. Yeah, that solved that problem. I have no idea how I managed to do that, but what the heck. Okay, now that I'm here. Okay, all kinds of echoing here, so shut that one off. And that way I don't have to worry about the echoing now that I've tested part of it. Okay. What time are we? 5:06. Still got a little bit of time, so we're cutting that tight, but what the heck. Okay. Just putting a couple of notes in the chat room just as a reminder. Yeah, I know I'm a little quiet, but still, I know that's the wrong way to do things. You should never leave dead air when you're live streaming. But this is the way I am. See, one of the biggest problems I run into, and this is why I ask people to put their questions in all caps, okay, is to ensure that I can actually track them down. Now, I am happy to say that much like I was talking about before, I'm just debating whether that is going to be the best place for it, or let's move it up top and see. I made some modifications to my office. Okay. And now I'm just trying to get used to trying to figure out which ones are best. If I do that, okay, I'm going to try it up there. If I have to move it down below, I will. But we are streaming live, so where are we here? We are a minute away. Oh, yeah, I already sent that out, but I should go back to this. And we go to homepage. For those of you that are not entirely aware yet. Here we are. Just add this little phrase. live now on YouTube. Oh. Ow. Guess we don't want the caps lock on there. I am live now on YouTube. And let's see if I can figure out how this works. Video, okay, live streaming, bonus. And if I'm doing this right, it means that I'm actually able to get all this information down right and get it out to you. Still working on just exactly how to do that. Whoops, didn't like that. As you can well imagine, this is still very much this is very much a work in progress. But here we are. Letting it do what it has to. Now we'll go over to the other sites if we can find them. Yeah, I'm looking up and what have you. What? Yeah, figures I made a typo right off the bat. But what the heck? This is live, so it is a learning curve in and of itself. Just trying to get things organized in the right fashion. I do apologize for the confusing way I'm starting things today. This is what we call still a learning curve. So what I'm doing right now, while I'm talking to you, while I'm waiting for the first people to show up, is I am literally just letting people know from a Facebook channel, from YouTube, and like from Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitter, that just what is going on. Just what it is I'm up to. And I was on YouTube yesterday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. talking about this same topic, the hybridization program, and how it works, what it's for, how the whole 9 yards goes. There we go. Now that's gone out to LinkedIn, now to get it out to Twitter. And we'll see how well that works. Right now, I'm not expecting incredible turnouts. I'm hoping for them, don't get me wrong, because something has just recently come to my attention that I'm going to have to deal with in the near future. But for the time being, I'm killing a little bit of time here while I manage to get things organized. Well, don't want to deal with that because I don't understand it yet. Well, don't want to do that either. Programs are, if you're wondering why I'm looking around all over the place, it's because I've got 4 monitors I'm working with. That's just the bottom line to it. And of course, still trying to get that organized so that I can actually do it smoothly. I'll tell you, I watched some live streamers, and I'm looking at it going, how do you manage to keep that active and that smooth? I really wish I had that going for me, but in all fairness, I really don't. And whether I ever will, I still don't know. But just adding that little quick post to Twitter to let people there know, because I'm only actually on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Okay, those are the only places that I'm actually located. Okay, and I can't see going to many more simply because of the fact that I don't know technology as well as I probably should. So I'll stick within my comfort zone for the time being, and we'll work forward from there. Okay, and we have now got the news out. Now we see how long it takes for things to happen. But in the meantime, okay, my name is R. Keith Andrews. I'm a spiritual guide and paranormal adept. Okay, and when I started looking at this, okay, I was looking for an idea as to what kind of title to put on this whole live stream, because the way I figure it, if you have a live stream, being able to call it something simple that gets people's attention, assuming you want to be heard. Correction. Assuming you desire to be heard. Okay. With that in mind, okay, you've got to have a way of letting people know you're here. Now, the thing that we have to really understand for me, okay, is I've been working in the consulting field now since I was 10, professionally since I was 23. Professionally meaning generating an income from it. Now, am I still interested in helping people? Absolutely. But I pick a topic to start with. But do understand, any question you have in any field, almost any field, there's a couple I won't touch, but I'll tell you right off, I'm not answering that question. Okay. I know there are going to be some people in here, some bots that come in here that I have no idea how to deal with. Okay. So I will ask you to bear with me on this one. It's going to be a bit of a learning curve for me. Now, the topic I'm starting with today is the hybridization program. And yes, I am referring to the alien hybridization program, but there is something in here that would be wise to pay attention to regarding the whole concept of what the hybridization program actually boils down to. Humans have been doing it to themselves and to the plants and animals on Earth for centuries. It is no different. Okay, when we take a look at what humans are doing, where humans turn around and they capture animals, they tranquilize them, they take them out of their environment to do blood samples, to do skin samples, check nerve samples, this sort of thing, check reaction, and then they work towards figuring out how that animal works. Okay, what environmental situations cause what and what outcomes. And we have to realize that is hybridization. Same as many plants have been combined, many animals have been combined. Even the whole concept of cloning, okay, is something that humans actually work with. They actually do this to other species. Okay, the problem with the hybridization program, as in alien abductions, is that people are the target. Okay, now let us not forget that even amongst people, okay, there is a certain amount of hybridization, okay, that is being done people to people. Okay, but then the whole catch is humans do not, I can't say I'm overly fond of the idea, but humans do not appreciate being abducted themselves. Yet they pay little attention to what they're doing to the other species, to the, literally to the fish, to the bears, to the tigers, whatever animal. Okay, humans do this all the time. The difference is that humans don't like it being done to themselves. Now, I'm not suggesting we should not be studying other races, but you got to realize, or would be wise to realize, that when you're talking about human hybridization with the offworlders, most of them see humans as a less evolved race. Okay, and this is perpetuated by the conflicts that are taking place on Earth, damaging their own world. Now, do not get me wrong. Other races have problems on their own world. They fight with each other regularly. They're not that much different from humans. The big difference in this respect is they don't tend to damage their own ecosystem. They don't destroy their own world. They'll go out and destroy somebody else's world without even blinking. Okay. But they are not out to do, they do not go out of their way to destroy their own. And this is where humans run into a very big problem. And I'm happy to say we are 15 minutes into the live stream. And we've got two people that have already joined us. Now, well, one person. But we'll see how that goes. Okay. Now, something I do want to point out, and I'm going to repeat this a number of times, but over the course of this live stream, regardless of what I'm talking about, if you have a question in any topic, come right out and ask, but put it in all caps, so I can find it, if you would, please. Okay. Virtually no question is off limits. There are a number, and if they come up, I will point blank tell you that's not going to be answered. Okay. But, from my standpoint, it boils down to this. We take a look at the hybridization program, and a couple of things that we have to realize is the alien hybridization program is a program designed to grow cultural interpreters. Okay. Now, humans, if you've watched any science fiction, and frankly, if you're listening to me now, the odds are you have. We've heard of things called, especially in the Star Trek movies and the Star Trek series, we've heard of universal translators. Now, all that boils down to is a computer that takes words much like the computer program that we've got access to here. Okay, the one called Google Translate. Okay, that is a translator, specifically targeted to take different languages and take whatever you say and turn them into another language. Now, the kicker to it is, with a universal translator, with a computer, there is no cultural inference. Okay, now it's already been discovered that cultural memory is caught up in DNA. Okay, there are certain things that any child is born with, and I don't just mean human ones. Okay, certain species are born with certain tendencies and certain knowledges. Fish are born knowing how to find their own place of origin. Okay, most of the herbivores that are born know how to eat. They may not know the rest of the world, but they do know how to eat. They do know how to find food. Now, it's not perfect by any means, but what I'm getting at in this case is that the DNA holds the cultural information. Okay, for humans learn to identify whoever the parent is right off the bat. Well, more to the point, whoever the adult is that pays the most attention to them right off the bat. Okay, this is what they call bonding. Now, at least from my understanding. Now, the nice little part of it is that when we start looking at the hybridization program, the reason for building it was when you take two completely different species, but ones which are genetically compatible, and you combine them into one form, the resulting child will have the genetic memories, the cultural memories of both cultures. At this point, you have a situation where you can teach them both languages, and there is a reference point for them. Okay, for instance, virtually every human knows if I hold my coffee cup up and I go, "Would you like a coffee?" and hand it towards you, most people, you may not know what coffee is, but most people instinctively know I'm offering you this cup. Okay, I'm offering to get you one like it. I'm offering you something that I'm talking about drinking. Now, the problem is, if I hold this up, are we still streaming? We are. Good. I thought I hit the wrong button. If I take this, can I go, would you like a coffee? You as a person, as a human, are going to know wholeheartedly, greetings, Nightmare. Glad you can make it. Yeah. If I hold this up and go, would you like a coffee? Now, humans on the whole are going to know this is not a coffee cup. This is not even a drink. Okay, but an off-worlder, an alien, a non-human is not going to know anything about it. So they're going to assume that this is whatever it is I've just called it. Okay. They won't even have a clue as to why I called it. Okay. But this is why they grow the cultural interpreters. That's why they have the hybridization program. And I do want to eliminate a couple of things. Okay, first and foremost, the hybridization program is not because the Greys, who, by the way, the Greys of Zeta Reticuli are the people that have really perfected the hybridization program on a universal level. Other races have their own version. Okay, humans have their version of hybridization. Most of what humans have done, though, has been kept to the botanical fields. Okay, what people keep calling GMOs, genetically modified organisms. It's because they've been tampering with the building blocks. Now, the Greys, to be clear, are not a bunch of clones and photocopies of themselves and thereby dying off. There is no indication on their worlds of them dying anytime soon. Now, certainly, over the centuries, I have no doubt that they've lost some of their planets due to a star going supernova. And that brings us back to this other issue on Earth, where people keep going, well, the world's going to end. Yeah, it will. And as one person I was talking to estimated, that'll be in about 5 billion years when the sun does something silly like gets too big for Earth. Okay. In the meantime, it's a simple issue from my perspective. It's time to put all this fear behind us. The hybridization, if aliens were coming to wipe out Earth, okay, you can bet your bottom dollar mankind would not know anything about it. Not until it was way too late. And I'll get to that on another day. But what they do, okay, I wonder if I kept the thing out. Hope I did. Because I know I was intending on it. Yep, I did. The hybridization program. Now, pardon my artwork, it's really pathetic if you ask me. But this funny little tool here, yeah, it kind of looks like a poor drawing of a flashlight. In a lot of ways, it looks that way. Okay, but if you ever come across on your body or on somebody else's, this configuration, 3 dots and a slash underneath it. Okay, if you ever come across that configuration, and now it will either be just little dots, it may be raised welts. Okay, but that configuration is the mark of the dextrospandalizer. Okay, that I think I came out really backwards. But that is the program, or that is the item that they use. It's a handheld device, very small. It really, in all fairness, it's got, I think, if I remember the measurement I took on one myself. Most of the time it's between a quarter inch and 3/8 of an inch in span between the dots. Okay. The way this works is this. They take this thing and they use it. It's just like a needle. And that's what this is supposed to indicate. You have 3 needles and that crossbar let's point there. And this crossbar here. The needles themselves are for taking DNA sample. Okay, the crossbar is to implant a tracking device. Now, some of them are still very primitive. Some of the tracking devices are of an odd metal configuration, one that humans do not recognize. Okay, they recognize it as being odd, but and I don't know the actual scientific term for it. Okay, but the reality of it is that the metal that is used is not on the current periodic table. The current periodic table of elements. Now, I'm no scientist to speak of. Okay, do I look at the world in a different fashion? Absolutely. Okay, but that tracking item, sometimes they use metal. Some of the different races use a variation on it where they are using a biological implant, meaning something that your body will actually absorb without a problem. Okay, and this is what people have to realize, is the intention of these is the same intention that humans have when they track tigers and elephants and what have you. Okay, just a little side note. Okay, it just came to my mind here, and I do this periodically. I remember seeing somebody, when we're talking about tracking animals, I remember seeing a big game hunter and it was on a news broadcast, not just a video. But this big game hunter had gone out tracking elephants. Now, to my way of thinking, elephants shouldn't be that hard to find. But the long and the short of it was, whoever this big game hunter was, he lost track of the elephant that he had been hunting down. Now, to make matters worse, he'd already shot it once, but he lost track of it, and he was driving a kind of something like a covered Jeep. Okay, it was just a small vehicle. He lost track of the elephant. The elephant came along behind him, and you'd think there'd be rearview mirrors, but this elephant come up behind him and crushed the car with the guy in it. Now, I mean, this is a bad thing in some ways, but in my eyes, the guy pulled the trigger first. Okay, the guy picked a fight with the wrong animal. This is the same idea that I look at when you take a look at people shooting it at alien craft and things you don't recognize. And the military is great for it. The military on many fronts are great for it, like from many countries. I'm not picking on any one in particular. And the topics I get into as I go along are likely to be controversial in some cases. Okay. So, I mean, some of the topics I'm looking at right now, like when you take a look at an alien craft, you don't recognize what it is. Does it make any functional sign? I agree with you there, Nightmare. That was my thought. I mean, if you're going to try and do something, it doesn't make a lot of sense. From my perspective, when you see an off-world craft, something you do not recognize it, the last thing I'm thinking of doing is getting a gun and trying to shoot at it, or a missile and trying to shoot at it. Okay, sure, I'm likely to grab a camera and see if I can get something. Okay, even in my position, because technology doesn't work that well, and to me, dealing with aliens is just plain normal. Okay, for me, that's just a run-of-the-mill thing. Okay, but the last thing I consider doing is racing up behind it and shooting at it. Or, look, there's one close to the ground. Let's run over and open fire. Now, most gun owners have a brain. Okay, most gun owners know exactly how to handle their guns, how to store them, how to make sure that unfortunate accidents don't happen. Okay, but there are those few wingnuts, and unfortunately, a good number of the really bizarre people, and the ones that really seem to be a little short-sighted, are the ones that end up in power. Otherwise, you wouldn't have these governmental issues of go and shoot that craft down. I look at it this way. Yeah, the craft are out there. They are coming. They are arriving, and they are absolutely abducting people. I do not begin to try and figure out all the different ramifications of that. Okay, but what I do figure is that first and foremost, the massive majority of people that get taken, that get abducted, get put back. Okay, it's just like scientists when they go out and they're trying to tag fish. Most of the fish get put back in the water. Now, it would not surprise me to find out that one or two of them get eaten. One or two of the fish get taken and get eaten. Let's face it, we've got this fine little problem we have to eat. But the hybridization program is a way of culturally interacting. Now, they don't only use humans. Okay, I've seen the hybridization program be used quite literally between Tormenon and Vulcan. Now, Tormenons are a reptilian race that is 7 to 8 feet tall for the most part. Okay, so the bigger ones have wings and a tail, but I've seen a hybrid Tormenon and Vulcan. Vulcans are a crystalline race. Okay, oddly enough, they actually evolved in our solar system, in the solar system. Okay, and in this case, I'm quite happy to tell you where they are. There is a planet closer to the sun than Mercury. Okay, and this is one that NASA knows about. It is inside the sun's photosphere. Okay, and the Vulcans are a crystalline race. They are living crystals. Okay, now obviously you put a human in that kind of environment, they're already dead before they get anywhere near it, primarily because of the distance. But that time will come. Okay, there are many humans that have left this solar system and returned. And yes, in answer to that question, I have done that. Okay, I cannot prove it. I'm not worried about whether people believe what I've gone through. Okay, I used to worry about it. I used to try and figure out how in tarnation am I going to get people to realize that this is a real world? How am I going to fit into it? Because to start with, I didn't have much interest in actually explaining it. Okay, I was having enough trouble just coping with it. Okay, now the other side of the hybridization program is yes, by doing this, they are getting an understanding of the human genome, just like humans are getting an understanding of the feline genome by tracking and tagging different feline people. Okay, as in tigers, lions, leopards, you name it. Okay, humans are doing the same thing that the off-worlders are doing on what they consider lower life forms. Okay, and the lower the life form, comparatively, the less respect they seem to be given. And don't get me wrong, when I was a kid, I was just as bad as some of the rest of you. I took a magnifying lens. Of course, I don't have it handy here. I've still got the magnifying lens I used to use. Okay, and I used to, unfortunately, I would fry an ant with a magnifying lens. Some of you may well have done this sort of thing. Okay, I'd be willing to wager that many of you have been. Okay, now whether you used a magnifying lens or not, okay, I know lots of kids that when they were younger pulled the arms off of, or pulled the wings off of flies, or pulled the legs off of spiders, and left them sit there. Well, the sad part is, I've also seen that happen with off-worlders testing to figure out what goes on if you violently remove a limb from a human. Okay, these are just things that are very complicated. You take a look at the vegans. Vegans have no pain center at all. You take the arm off of a vegan, and aside from the fact, by the way, they have to be an insect. They evolved in much the same way that insects do. But you take a vegan and you tear the arm off it, okay, and what you end up with is a very simple issue of, you end up, the vegan, they'll know they're missing the arm because they've got nothing there to pick up with it anymore, but they don't feel the loss. Therefore, when they came across humans and they started experimenting, they don't have anesthetic, they don't have any kind of painkiller because they just don't feel it. So why develop it? Okay, humans did not develop rebreathers, oxygen enhancement systems, until enough of them showed up where it was a viable thing to build. Vegans never developed a painkiller. Okay, the hybrid, when we're talking about the grays, now you'll see, first of all, you'll see two different species of grays. Okay, you've got the short ones. Those are primarily your scientists. Those are the ones that do all the cranial work, if you will. But there's a second set, the taller ones, the tall grays. Those are your controllers. Those are the diplomats. Those are the ones that determine what is being looked at, what is being researched. Okay. So all in all, you're looking at a very simple little issue. They are providing this for not only themselves, but they also turn around and help other races with the same idea, as in combining the different races, combining, for instance, if you take the Arcturons, they will combine the Arcturons with humans or with Mobians. There's not much point in creating a hybrid Mobian and human, because Mobians evolved on Earth, and about 40,000 years ago, they left the planet and they colonized Mobius, which is on the far side of the sun, in the same orbit as Earth. Okay, there are certain hybrid playing groups that you just cannot make a hybrid of. For instance, for obvious reasons, you cannot make a hybrid form of a human and a fire elemental. It just can't be done because you're dealing with two totally different organisms that end up creating a problem. Okay, one will cook the other before you get anywhere near the hybridization. That would be first and foremost. Now, the neat part about this, about what I'm doing right here, this is going to eventually evolve into something a whole lot more complicated. Okay, the reason I'm starting with this side of it is it's a topic I'm familiar with. Well, they're all topics I'm familiar with, I'll be dealing with. But this one I've had a lot of practice talking about. Okay, where this is eventually going to go, depending on what kind of following I get, what kind of, how many people I end up with actually tuning in and watching the live streams. Okay, is eventually we will go into the idea, into the more complex and the more detail-oriented version of literally remembering yourself, remembering who you are, what you are capable of, and coming to realize that whatever race you are, whatever species you are, you're all equally of equal value. You may have different pocketbooks. It doesn't matter. Okay. But I will in time be dealing with concepts like soulmates, like twin flames, soul families, okay, and how that all interacts. I will be dealing with different techniques to deal with finances, and I mean finances when you don't have $30,000 or $40,000. Now, the nice part about it is, like the hybridization program, I can show you how everyone can work with it. Now, I certainly will tell you, if you don't have a scientific background, trying to understand the combining of DNA, and the combining of those different strands, is going to be complicated. I don't understand them myself entirely. I understand the outcomes. I understand probabilities and what have you. But when we're talking about the hybridization program, figuring out what people are capable of doing, figuring out where your limits are, what you're able to do, is a rather critical issue. Okay, because until you know what you're capable of, you have no way of figuring out how far you can push things. Okay, when we talk about the whole program, why is it being done? Well, like I said, the reason they're doing it is cultural interpretation. You cannot make viable connection with people if you cannot communicate with them. And this applies to some of the problems I see with relationships. If you're not talking to your other half, you're going to run into a problem with if that communication line has collapsed, then you're going to run into a massive snag of how to deal with it and how to get on even footing. And I've mentioned before, okay, and I'll mention it again. If you've got a question in any field, absolutely ask. Okay, either put it in all caps in the chat section here in the live feed, or if you look below the live stream when it finally gets posted, if you look below it or below any one of my videos. At this point, well, I've been doing this for over a year now, and I've hit most days, so I undoubtedly am well over 300 videos, which ain't great, is not very much compared to some of the real superstars in this field. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to be going into playing video games and going, oh, look at this and watch how this happens. There's lots of people out there, and that is so far outside my field of if you will, specialization. I'm by no means an expert, but I won't be going into playing games because most of them I can't keep up with anyway. Okay. Most of the stuff I deal with is how to figure out who you are, how to figure out why you operate the way you operate so that you have the tools where you can take a look up in the sky and instead of going, there's a whole pile of UFOs, right? I mean, I love the fact that the name has been changed. Now I think it's called a UAP. Now, from my standpoint, a UFO means unidentified flying object. Okay. Why change the name? That's what it is. But apparently it's been changed to unidentified aerial phenomenon. Well, I'm thinking if you're looking in the sky, guess what? It's aerial. It's still unidentified. My goal is to help people identify these sorts of things. Okay. For me, an alien is simple. Okay. Somebody that wasn't born in the area they're in. Therefore, okay, if you think about it, when a human goes to a different part of the world and is there without registering, without going through proper channels, as it were, what ends up happening? They get called an illegal alien. Well, they are. They did not go through legal channels. And when you can bet your bottom dollar that the any off-worlders that are on this planet, are absolutely, by human standard, alien. Okay, they are absolutely illegal alien. Illegal aliens. But do understand, humans are not likely to go up to many of these races and go, excuse me, can I see your identification? Intriguingly enough, that will in time come. Now, when we talk about what I look at, when I'm looking at the races, and I talk about the various different things, like the hybridization program, for instance, okay, I'm talking about it from personal experience. This is not a question of reading what somebody else has said. This is a question of what I've personally witnessed myself. And that's why I consider myself a specialist, not an expert. There is so much I do not know, but I will tell you this. so many people have asked me, what about blood types. Okay. Cliff has just entered the room, and what he's done is Cliff has said, I saw a show said 1952 UFOs over the Capitol looked like fiery balls. Can you comment? Now, I haven't seen the video itself, but I can tell you this. Many of the craft that come into the atmosphere, their hull ionizes, and it can quite often give off, if they come in too fast, they will heat up, and from human standpoint, from observation on the ground, they will look like a fiery ball. Okay. Now, yes, and we can go the route of saying maybe it was a meteor or something. You can absolutely go that route. But I've seen these things come in myself, and they come in so hot that they look like they're on fire. That's usually because the speed they come in, it hyper what's the word I'm looking for? Hyper agitates the air around it, thereby causing the hydrogen in the air to light up on occasion. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not like the chain reaction that people worry about. Oh, if you set one off, it's going to blow up the entire world. Not going to happen. But what you're likely looking at is craft that came in too fast and too hot. Okay. Probably could have been a number of reasons why they did it. But humans are naturally afraid of what they don't understand. Now, that video in 1952. Okay. I love when we get the older videos. I don't watch a lot of them, and I've had people send them, and I just don't have time for it. Okay. Because I'm not a video analyst. But I will tell you, I get a kick out of the people that go, oh, that video filmed back in 1952, that was all fake. It was all CGI. No, that was real. CGI is a very new phenomenon. And yes, it's about 20 years, maybe 30 years older than what mankind knows. Okay, because inventions are made. When you take a look at computers are already about 30. They're already, 6 months out of date, and probably a year out of date by the time they even hit the market. Well, those UFOs were undoubtedly traveling way too fast. Now, depending on what they look like, and I can take a look at some videos, and I'll go, if it's a clear shot, I'll go, okay, that's what the ship was. Okay, so as I haven't seen the video, okay, can I tell you exactly what it was? No, but the odds are it was simply moving way too fast and getting way too warm for its own good. Okay, could have been any number of causes there. But, you take a look at that, especially if you go back in ancient times. Okay, and I'm talking go way back to biblical times. There's a song that goes, Ezekiel saw the wheel rolling. Same idea. You have a ship coming in. There was no way that he could understand it. Okay, there's no way that most humans will understand what they're looking at. Oh, okay. And Cliff says it was described by a witness, not a video. That works out well. But that's the explanation still stands, but thanks for the clarification there, Cliff. Well, Nightmare's asking, Roswell crash, was it a crash or was it shot down? Technically, the answer is yes to both. Okay, the Roswell crash, it was shot down, but it was not shot down by humans. Okay, and was it a real crash? The answer is yes. But when I went to my first UFO conference, I was talking to a young lady there about the crash site. And I laid out the crash site for her, and she looked at me and she goes, how do you know all this? It was never publicized. I said, no, very true, it wasn't. Right. But what people have been led to believe about it, was it a real craft? The answer is yes. Do they still have said craft? The answer is also yes. The occupants are in question, because the occupants that they got from everything I've seen were not what you've been told, but they were alien, and they were certainly not of Earth. Hence the term alien. But mankind was not what shot it down. That's not where the problem came from. Okay. But do they still have it? Are they still working on it? The answer is yes. Are they still utilizing it to reverse engineer and figure out some of the physics? And the reality is that the way the ship works is not based on, it's not a question of it defies the laws of physics. It simply defies the laws of physics that humans know. That's all it defies. Okay. But was it a real crash? Yeah. Kind of made a mess, but, at the same time, can't really blame them for it. But that particular craft is one that is very sad. Like there were two crafts and two crashes that happened at essentially the same time. The one in Roswell was the one that was much more widely publicized because it happened in front of so many people. The other craft, which happened to be the other ship involved, okay, the other craft crashed close by at roughly the same time, but was totally ignored because it was out in the middle of nowhere and people didn't see it. Okay, they may well have saw the second craft and not reported it, right? Or had it wiped, had it essentially dismissed. But there was a second ship involved in that also went down. Okay, and that particular ship opened a whole lot of questions. Okay, create a lot of answers too. And that second ship, and this is something that only just came to light the other day. That second ship was involved in what caused a lot of the different issues around some of the myths that are rolling around because of Roswell. Now, the best I can tell you as far as why that ship was in the area in the first place was because they were simply, that was a scan, and that was a scientific research vessel. And you can bet your bottom dollar with that kind of a designation, you can understand why humans were trying to hold on to it, and still have it, by the way. Okay, it has not been retrieved. It has not been asked for the occupants. It really is irrelevant. It is so long ago. It would be like somebody in today's world wanting to get back a TRS-80 computer because of the information on it. Well, if you know anything about the history of human computers, that is so far outdated, it's totally useless in today's world. So is the ship from the Roswell crash. Okay, even like humans, technology does evolve. And some of the things I've seen happen, like if you go back, I think I mentioned this in this stream, the issue of Gene Roddenberry and some of the things he talked about. Okay, well, he talked about what we are talking on right now. Okay, this video, Gene Roddenberry came up with the image, and I don't know if it was him or if it was one of his support crew, came up with this idea of being able to talk on a computer, okay, with video, like is happening right now. Okay, now video is a very slow wavelength. It does not reach as far as it can. But when you get video reaching at even further distances, talking planet to planet or star system to star system becomes very viable. Okay, this is just where technology is going to go. And it's going to evolve in a very simple fashion, one step at a time. And yes, some of the vehicles that are being picked off, that humans, some vehicles are shot down by humans. Absolutely. Some are natural crashes. Some are just simply system failure. Okay, but mankind has been emulating nature, emulating other science, okay, for centuries to try and make something a little bit more modern. Okay, but this is not the first time we've gotten and that we have arrived at this point. Okay, that I'm aware of. Okay, there's one time when we actually got off the planet completely. But there are at least two other occasions or two other levels of technology where mankind acquired flight. Okay, where they developed the capacity for flight, where they developed the capacity to cross the ocean. Okay, this is not the first time we've gotten and that we've arrived at this point. This is, quite frankly, the third and at least the third that we've arrived at aerial. Okay, sorry, fourth that we've arrived at aerial, but the third that we've managed to get into outer space. Okay, and it's not stopping anytime soon. Okay, I do strongly recommend, especially if you're having memories. Like if you take a look at, if you look at whatever you've been through, and you think you may have been taken. Okay, this mark, like I said, this mark here is a prime example. Now, this is not the only mark that I've seen. Okay, but this is the one used by the Greys for hybridizing, for the hybridization program. And this is the tool they're using to do it. Okay, so you find that mark, the three pinpricks, and the lateral bar underneath them. Okay, that's the tool they're using to withdraw DNA. Now, before anybody really goes to town on this, no, blood type is not a flat out target marker. Okay, a different blood type does not mean that you're not human or that you've been taken. It does not mean you're more or less likely to be taken. Okay, it is simply another variant that is taken into consideration when they are deciding whether or not to take somebody. Okay, that's just the reality behind it. Blood type matters if you're looking to do a study on people with blood type with O type blood. Okay, then those are the people you're going to target. If you want to target if you want to get to understand people that grew up in a wealthy situation, you don't abduct paupers. Okay, you may abduct paupers in order to compare them, but to actually understand the people that are born wealthy. Okay, you don't start picking up paupers to figure it out. You pick up the wealthy people and you start targeting them. Okay, but it's not a question of them being any more likely to be picked up. It's kind of like if they're aiming at striving to understand how a pauper thinks. Okay, you don't pick up a wealthy person and talk to them about what it is to live on, what it's like to live on the street, because 99% of them, and I'm betting that's about right as far as percentages go, never lived on the street, so they don't have a fundamental foundation for it. Okay, I mean, I remember with one person years ago, we walked into a hotel room, and that hotel room was missing one thing, and the person nearly had a coronary. They looked in it and they went, "There's no TV." And I'm looking at it going, very true, but we didn't really come here to watch TV. We could have done that at home. Right. But the level of hardship that people go through and the level of experience that people go through when they get abducted. If you want to know what it's like to be abducted, do not talk to somebody that has written stories about it and has never been there, unless they are a massive researcher. Okay, there are many people that are fabulous scientists and have researched all sorts of things, but I will tell you, firsthand experience is far more beneficial and far more informative than secondhand or retold. Now, in the old days, history was learned and passed on by word. Okay, people were taught when they spent decades learning the histories and repeating them in order to pass the information on. Now, I've hidden from the world for the most part, and still do in a lot of ways. But at this stage in my life, I am looking at things and going, okay, this information has to come out. Now I'm going to read something that I posted that actually has nothing to do with the hybridization. I just have to call it up here. Okay, there was a post put on Facebook today. Okay, and I debated whether to repeat this one. I posted, I had to cut it short. I didn't say everything I was going to. But I'm going to read you exactly what I wrote on Facebook. The question was, and I'm paraphrasing this part, but the question was, if you could telepathically communicate to the 7.9 billion people on this planet, what message would you give them? Okay, what message would you pass on? So, like I said, the whole reason for doing this live stream is to help people remember who they are. Okay, remember what they are. And that means all aspects of you. This is done by past life memories, what people are calling downloads, experiences with aliens, experiences with other cultures that you've never dealt with. Looking into things like your own heritage, what your family history is like, looking into these sorts of things, or why do I see the world in the fashion that I do? In my case, now my eyes are a wonderful thing. Okay, they are in your case too. But it used to be decades back, I could hold my glasses right here. Well, actually, in all fairness, it was only 15 years ago. I could hold my glasses right there, that close to my face, and I could not see them. Okay. They have gotten better now. I can actually see the whites in my own eyes, in the video. Used to be, I'd have to be so close to you that I couldn't. But I read that note, and it just dawned on me. This is the time to point it out. Okay. And the answer I wrote to that question was, they asked, why, if you could tell everybody telepathically, if you could pass on a message, what would you tell them? Okay. Now, you can go and look it up yourself. I have no idea where you'll find it other than it's on Facebook. Okay. But what I wrote in response was, working together, we can make this a better world for almost all peoples. Humans, plants, animals, minerals, energies, ancient races, and aliens alike. But it will take communication, effort, and acceptance on the part of all peoples. We are all connected. This starts with each and every one of you, myself included. It is long overdue time to put our past fears and prejudices aside and work together to make this a better world for almost all peoples. One vastly important note: the world upon, within, and around us is far more intricately intertwined, interconnected than most people of any race truly comprehend. Okay, this is my message to you. The primary reason I returned to this world, this life, at this time, I have returned once more after many lifetimes on many worlds. I'm here to remind you all that no religion, gender, level of education, bank balance, intellectual level, sexual orientation, gender identity, or material possession of any other differentiators make anyone better than the person or entity next to another. Okay, where this becomes a critical factor from my standpoint is when we take a look at the hybridization program. Everyone is being looked at. Okay, all of it. Because it's all interconnected, and by understanding the links, okay, mankind is going through, and they've got this neat little program, Ancestry.com, where they start linking people together and realizing there are no, if you will, purebred. There isn't a purebred race anymore. Humans have, much as they've evolved in multiple different locations and are of different pigmentation, they are all so tightly interwound now that it's mixed all over the place. Okay, when you take a look at the hybridization program, all they're doing is trying to sort out a way to communicate with people, understanding that you do not talk to people living in a small town in the same way you talk to people living in a big city. People living on an ice floe do not understand the hardships or the outlook of people living in the desert. Okay, these are all differentiators, and every one of these people has something. Everybody you know has something to contribute. Yes, some of them are frustratingly ill-educated. Now, I'm not well-educated. I graduated. Okay. The thing I find fascinating in my case is that I was diagnosed mentally retarded after a massive fever. Okay. And they told my parents if I ever learned to tie my shoes, I was doing good. Right? Well, I solved that problem. I wear boots. But 8 years later, 10 years later, roughly, I was put into a course in theoretical genetics. Okay. Now, I'm talking theoretical because they wouldn't let me in the lab due to other issues. Okay. But the theory behind it was absolutely spot on. And what ended up happening is, contrary to what I've been diagnosed with, okay, I ended up graduating on the honor roll. Now, when we look at the hybridization program, you have to remember that there are certain compatibility problems. Okay, and by the way, the fact that humans are bipedal, okay, it is one of the most ineffective, one of the most unstable forms. There's a lot of races that are bipedal, a lot of them. Okay, but they're not the same. They're not the most stable. Okay, you end up with all sorts of things happening, which is why when you take a look at the three-legged stool, okay, that is the most stable form. Okay, it puts it as balanced as it can get, pretty much. Now, I have seen races with 2 legs, with 3 legs, with 4, 5, and six legs plus more. As a matter of fact, you can think of one that has 7 limbs that it walks on. Okay, all of these are different races. They're all of them have been, if you will, utilized in the hybridization program one way or another. But you do not try and hybridize an elemental with a corporeal. Okay, because the genetic superstructure is so different it can't be done. Yet. In all fairness, I shouldn't say it can't be done, but it turns out an interesting twist. I've seen it done, but the Greys are not the ones doing it. There's a race much older than the Greys that deal with it, with that kind of hybridizing. But they have evolved so far beyond it that they really don't pay any attention to the program. The Greys are still at that infancy side of study, which is why the massive majority of them happen to be scientifically inclined. Okay. From their standpoint, because they live on a world that is so volatile, they have looked to different things to see. Yes, they would love to find a planet that they can colonize. And by the way, colonizing requires it does not have a dominant caretaker race. Caretaker race being the most technologically advanced, surface dwelling, surface dwelling sentient race. Okay. But the reality is not every planet has one. With the Greys, they are still studying a lot of things. Now, of course, Earth itself has such a wide diversity of stuff going on, and it has such a phenomenal database of the soul sector. The off-worlders call Earth the soul sector because the soul is the title that is given to the sun. Okay, and it's this solar system that contains a staggering amount of information, much like the ancient library of Alexandria. Okay, with that in mind, humans are, are we being abducted? Are humans being abducted? Absolutely. Are other races from Earth being abducted? You can bet your bottom dollar. Okay, and the reason I put it that way is I've seen it done. Okay, yes, I know that many of my claims probably sound outrageous or outlandish or whatever word you want to use. Okay, but the reality of it is I'm not about to try and convince people that this is what I've gone through. And I find it fascinating when people come forth and they turn to people that work in this field, and somebody turns around and says, when you're working in this field and somebody turns around and you talk to them and go, this is what I went through, and Cliff, you may well have gone through this. Okay, where you laid this out and somebody just brushed it off, as it were. Okay, well, unfortunately, I see it happen way too often that people will say, oh, this is what I've gone through, and it gets brushed aside like that couldn't have happened. Right. Well, I'll tell you, I have run into a number of people that claim to have solid interaction with, like a solid face-to-face interaction with other races. And yet, I've borne witness to the fact they don't recognize the simple ones. Now, why I don't begin to note. And by the way, before anybody says anything, no, I'm not going to be dropping names of anybody that I've run into or anybody that I've had interaction with. Okay. I've done it with one person because I had explicit permission from that one person. And I'm not about to be using anybody's name personally, on a regular basis anyway. The thing I do desire to assure you of is that if you reach out to me with a question in mind, with an experience, first and foremost, I will not be telling people where I got the information. Okay. I may well, depending on what the event is. Like, for instance, when I was talking to somebody about their experience on a starship. Okay, there was a gentleman that I was talking to that had been taken aboard a fighter craft. Well, he'd been taken aboard a battleship. He laid the whole thing out for me. Okay. And, quite frankly, it corroborated some of the things I already knew that I'd already experienced. But this gentleman laid it out for me. And it became a very viable corroboration for me for what I'd personally gone through. Am I going to tell you who he was? Not a prayer. Okay. It's just not going to happen. The only person who I will tell you directly, this is who I am dealing with. This is the way I am. This is what I've gone through. I will tell you I've gone through this. And if you choose to believe me, that works out well. If you choose not to, that's okay too, because I'm not here to prove it. There is no way on the planet I'm going to prove a lot of what I know. Okay, and that includes things like, like past lives, things like soulmates, soul family. Okay, a lot of that information I'm putting in many of the books that I'm in the process of writing. Fascinatingly enough for me, I never thought I'd get to this point, but currently I've got 2 novels, 2 self-help books, 1 reference manual, and a children's story, all in print. The two novels are available on authorhouse.com, on Indigo, on Chapters, on Amazon. Okay. So, and everything, like, I don't use a pen name. Okay, which means if you're looking for books that I've written, those 2, if you look up, quite literally look up R. Keith Andrews, you'll find it, because I don't use a different name. Even when I was traveling around dealing with psychic fairs, and I remember doing a live reading for somebody. I was sitting down, they came to the table, and they laid out a situation. As it turned out, they had been abducted. Okay. And there was no question they had everything going against them, as it were. And all they could remember was bits and pieces of it. So we pulled things back together and reminded them of some of the details they had actually forgotten. But do understand, when I'm helping somebody recall a memory, I don't go things like, let's say, well, was the guy, did the guy's hair, was it brown or was it blonde? Okay, I never go that route. Okay, from my standpoint, it's not a question of, because that can lead an answer. Okay, if you want to, and I'm not a professional hypnotherapist, right? But when I wanted to talk to the person about because they remembered seeing really short people around, they knew they were laying down, and that's all they could tell, right? But they remembered seeing really short people. Okay, so what I asked them to give a basic description, and they did identify that these individuals did have a head, and they did have arms, but they couldn't see anything below the chest. Primarily, as it turned out, because what they were looking at was way too short to be seen. But they had mentioned that they saw the thing reach up, reach up towards them. And I said, okay, can you describe what you saw? Like what that thing reaching up looked like? Can you describe it any more readily? Right. Turned out, in the long and the short of it, was that they had been abducted by Greys. Now, something you have to realize where it comes to the Greys. One thing I have discovered myself is that there are somewhere between 15 and 20 actual different races of the Grey species. Much like Earth has a number of different races, black, yellow, brown, you get the idea. Okay, that are still of the human species. But the difference between the Greys and the humans, our Greys do not try and kill each other anymore because they're different species, different race. Okay, they've gotten away from the idea of the skin color matters. It really doesn't. Sometimes skin color is a matter of pigmentation. Sometimes it's a genetic defense system. Okay. And that is one of the things that the hybridization program was used for to start with. Before they got into the hybridization program, they got into the genetic side of pulling the body apart in order to understand what it was going through, understand what made a human a human. Because until you know what makes something something, you're going to have a hard time understanding how to combine it with something else. And that's where the hybridization program comes in. Okay, when you're looking at the overall package, okay, when you look at the overall situation, the people that are there, okay, the people that you're looking at are what make your life what it is. Now, you cannot change what you've gone through. You can certainly come to understand it in a different light or come to look at it in a different light. Okay, I'm just looking at it kind of, well, we'll try English on that one. I'm going to go sideways on you here. Just another video that I caught. And again, it was a human doing something that was absolutely dense. Okay. Now, I talked to somebody in the grocery store one day, and they turned around and said, hunting should be banned. It absolutely must be banned. I looked at them and went, why? They went, now we're standing in a grocery store in front of the meat department. Okay. And she looks at me and she goes, hunting should be banned. People should only be able to buy their meat in a grocery store where no animals are killed. Right. Which is a wonderful thought. And I just looked at her and I went, well, there's an idea. Now, you figure out whether or not that made any sense. Okay. I mean, quite frankly, I found it kind of comical that they'd come to that conclusion. Okay. But they were absolutely adamant that hunting should not be permitted. You should only buy your meat in a grocery store where no animal is killed. Which realistically, when you think about it, is pretty accurate. They don't kill animals in grocery stores. But the video I was going to talk about, which wasn't unidentified, a guy was sitting on his porch up north, and he caught a real sick, like a real odd sound, a very weird growl. And he started looking around. He had his camera out, so he started filming. And what he spotted a wolverine. Now, a wolverine is a nasty northern creature. Okay. Very nasty little thing. They're only about 3 feet long, about 1.5 feet tall. Okay. They are, if I recall correctly, they are mustelid, kind of like an oversized weasel or minx. Okay, but wolverines are nasty enough. They will take down a bear under the right circumstances, as in they're in a bad mood, the bear's available. But the video tracked this wolverine walking into the outskirts of town, walked by this guy's house to a place, a door or two down. Well, it had walked around, it's sniffing around, gets into this house a couple of doors down. The guy did not approach the wolverine. The wolverine stopped at this big pickup truck, okay, and sniffed around the edges of the pickup truck. And the video showed the wolverine stand up, put its paws on the side of the truck. And no, it wasn't tall enough to climb into it, but its nose was tall enough to reach over. And then all of a sudden it stops, gets back down on the ground, walks around the truck and into the carport. Well, the guy had the video on. You could hear this snuffling and this noise going on, and the growling and the hissing and what have you. And then all of a sudden, there's this absolutely aggressive scramble at the door. Okay, bear in mind, the wolverine has very nasty claws. Okay, and you could hear the claws on the door. This went on for a good 5-10 minutes. And then all of a sudden the scraping stopped. And all you heard from inside the house was a blood-curdling scream. Okay. And moments later, the wolverine come back out of the house, past the car and past the truck, walked right past the guy with the camera and took off back into the woods. Now, the reason I find this fascinating is it was a stupid move on the human's part. Okay. Understanding that a wolverine is a protected animal, the human made 3 massive mistakes. Okay, first of all, he killed a wolverine. Okay, that was the first mistake. He broke a law, and I've got no qualms about it. And this is why I tell people, when you contact me, I don't pass on information except in a couple of situations, i.e., if what you're planning on doing is illegal, you can bet I'm not going to back you up on it. Okay, but he filmed this wolverine heading off. The guy made the first mistake. He killed the wolverine. The second mistake was he tossed the carcass into the back of the truck, a fresh carcass into the back of his pickup. Then he turned around and drove 30 miles back to town with the carcass in the back of an open truck. And he parked. The third mistake, which proved to be the fatal one, is the man did not shoot the mate of the first wolverine. The mate came back specifically to do one little thing: kill the guy that killed her mate. That was all it was. Did the job, took off back into the woods. Okay, and if you know anything about wolverines, okay, they, as far as I understand it, they mate for life. And this one certainly had a bone to pick. Okay, and this is why I say humans have a tendency of really underestimating their own or overestimating their own capacity to do things. So when we talk about the hybridization program, and people are going, well, they're trying to figure out our weaknesses so they can come and take over the planet. No, they already know your weakness. Okay, the weakness on the whole of Earth is technology. Okay, one simple EMP pulse, a little more effective than what humans have, will put humans back in the Stone Age, because most of the techniques that are used to even build what we're building with computers, the way that things have been automated, takes that knowledge away from people. So when you look at the hybridization program, they are not looking for weaknesses. They are looking for differences and understanding in a xenobiological format. They're looking to understand the denizens of Earth. And rest assured, they are not just taking humans. They are taking members of the ancient races. They are taking plant and animal samples and soil samples to examine all of it. Okay. The ironic part of it is, I know of one very well known case, okay, of an abduction that took place that wasn't exactly an abduction and wasn't even there for it. The reason for being there in the first place was not to collect a human. They were actually there to collect other things, and curiosity got the better of the people involved, leading to an unfortunate situation. Thankfully, the individual involved was returned a while later, because it took him a while to put him back together. But he was returned a few days later, and he is, last I knew, he was alive and well. Am I going to tell you who he is? Not a prayer. Okay. But I can tell you the reason that the ship was there in the first place had nothing to do with him. Okay, it had everything to do with sampling the area that he happened to be in, checking for soil and plant samples. It was just an unfortunate incident that caused the problem, and an underestimation of what they were of the resiliency and what they were working on. The resiliency of the human genome and the technology they were working with. So, I mean, do the Greys make miscalculations? Absolutely. There is no question there. But are they infallible? Absolutely not. Are they a violent race trying to overtake Earth, or trying to infiltrate Earth, or the government, or guide the elites into how to control people, they've got no interest in it. Okay, and it's one of those things I look at and I get asked all the time, or people insinuate it. Oh, they're here to conquer Earth. If the Greys or any other race wanted to conquer Earth, it would be child's play. I mean, it's funny. And it just dawned on me. If you look up over my shoulder here, and I can't figure out where I'm pointing. Where is it? Right there. That figure there. Okay. Now, that is a figure from a video game. But I have seen suits of armor that size, okay, that are manned by living entities. Okay. Technology like that does exist. Now, that thing happens to be plastic. Okay. But this particular one right here, okay, that particular figure happens to be from a video game called Skyrim. Okay. The other figures that are all up here, those are all dragons. Now, people talk about dragons, and the majority of dragons are massive. Okay. I simply like collecting dragons, so I've got them all over the place. But those particular ones, I actually have turned around and they fit beautifully. All they are is figures that somebody else made. But I've actually seen dragons that size. Okay, I've also seen the bigger ones, by the way. But when you're talking about, when we're looking at some of the scientific programs that are going on, mankind's got a staggering number of hidden programs they're not telling you about. Okay, not the least of which, and it's been denied, it's been hashed over lots and lots of times. Okay, I love the fact they call the far side of the moon. I love the fact they look at it and they go, that's the dark side of the moon. Rest assured, it's facing the sun, it's anything but dark. And welcome, Carl. Glad to see you made it. We have, I've been looking at that a lot, and many of the programs that mankind is working on, mankind is working on their own version of a hybridization tracking program. You want to see the easiest one that they did, and everybody goes, oh, the government's going to implant us. Guess what? Government already did. Most people carry one of these, a cell phone. Okay? It's got a chip in it, and if you are running it, they can tell where you are. Are they possibly tracking what you're saying? Probably is closer to the point. But it doesn't matter because they don't really care whether you're buying broccoli at Safeways or maybe you're buying broccoli at Target. I don't know. They don't care. They worry about whether you're talking about doing something illegal or that is dangerous to the country. Okay. So, I mean, I'm looking at this. Now, I've talked about a number of different races, and this is the other side of things. Well, where is this? I'm going to drop that on the floor. This, and I haven't figured out how to do it yet, otherwise I would. But this is a little book. This actually details the data. Okay, not statistics, but the information on 59 different races I've personally dealt with. Okay. Some of the races I've talked about are in that book. Okay, the Greys, the Tormenon, I was going to say the Yldrbac, but I don't think. I'm curious, though. Wonder if the Yldrbac are in here. And we just scan through this thing. I don't remember everything I write down. This is one of the reasons why I write it down. No, the Yldrbac are not. The Udina are. The race that I mentioned that has 7 limbs that it walks on, that's the Udina. They are included in that. Okay, I'm working on a second volume of it, but what I haven't figured out how to do is take the pictures that I'm getting drawn for it. Okay, and get them on the paper. I haven't figured out how to take a picture and share it on here because I only just got the printer and I haven't got it copied out yet either. But that right there just answered one question. In time, what I'm going to do, because I will eventually put them in the book, right? But I just got the printer. As soon as I can get the printer working, I will have a perfect way to bring the pictures so I can actually show you some of these races. Okay. And rest assured, not all of them are human looking. Not all of them are bipedal. Okay. When we're talking about this technique, the hybridization program, they also have other things. I've got the information on another piece of equipment. Okay, I forget right off the top of my head what it was called. Okay, but it's a matter of relocator, what you would call a transporter. It's already being tested, not being tested, but being built in different places, different components in different places around the world. Okay, but it works on a different level of science than what mankind is used to at this point. Okay, and the reality of it is that when we talk about different races, the different alien races, okay, we are talking about the same, they have the same cultural implications in a lot of ways and cultural challenges as humans do. They just have better toys. Okay, we've got telescopes that can see the other side of the galaxy and further. And I'm no astronomer. Okay, but the off-worlders have technology that can see to the other end of a wormhole. Okay, mankind has ships that can travel through the water. Okay, off-worlders have ships that can travel through magma without any problem, as in molten lava. Okay, it's just different levels of technology. Okay. And what do we got here? Oh, well, that would explain why. Well, Carl, it is 9:30 p.m. right now for us here. For me here in Canada. In Kelowna. Carl's just announcing here that he's in at 5:30 in the morning in Great Britain, which is why it takes him. If I were running this longer, right? If I've got questions, will I continue? The answer is yes. Okay. Do I plan on continuing longer? Not usually. Primarily because the later it gets, the harder it gets to stay focused. But the reality is that everybody's question is important to me. Okay. And something I've always looked at is I know I run into a time frame, and this is why I say if you've got a question that I don't have time to answer while I'm live, drop me a line on one of the contact points below this video, and I will do my best to get back to you with an answer. Okay, thus far, not having a lot of trouble with it. And rest assured, the questions don't just have to be about what is being broadcast, what is being live streamed here. Because the number of different topics that I deal with, the number of different client questions that I've had over the years, to the tune of something in excess of 80,000 clients. Okay, yeah, I've been doing this a long time. And the funny part about it is it's probably way over that because all of my clients have not been human. Okay. It was a real shock to my son when he had proof positive that when I had been telling him for years, I talked to the animals. Okay, I'd been talking to them I'd been telling him that for years. He finally got proof positive of it a couple of years ago. And he looks at me and he goes, "Dad, you were talking to the seagulls." I said, "Yeah." I told you I've been doing that for years. He goes, "Yeah, but Dad, I didn't believe you." Which is something that if you've ever had an encounter with something that you cannot explain, you probably run into that. I ran into the same issue regarding the abductions. Okay, I've been telling people it's been happening for years. And it wasn't until just a couple of years back that my son actually got his first viable evidence of it. Okay. Now, am I here to prove it happened? No. The way I figure it, my father on his deathbed confirmed it was all real. And for me, that was the end of looking to prove it to anything. Because I look at it this way. I've never looked at people in a fashion. I've never looked at people as being any less important than the next one. Okay, I remember I was working in a restaurant one day, and the manager created a problem. Actually, it was the owner, and I told him point blank, put the order back where it was, or I close the kitchen down and walk out. He goes, "You can't do that." So I shut the kitchen off and walked out. Why I didn't get fired, I have no idea. And I don't recommend that. As a matter of fact, I strongly recommend if you work for somebody else, do not do that because the odds are extremely high you'll get fired. Okay. If you're having trouble, I've got one client I'm waiting to hear back from. And in all fairness, I hesitate to call them a client because right now I don't know. But they were asking a few questions. They've been having troubles. I'm waiting to hear back from them to help get them sorted out because they've run into a situation that they don't understand. Now, at this point, I haven't got a clue what the situation is. Okay. But like you, if you've got a question that you haven't wanted to ask here, and many people won't ask questions in the chat room. Okay, they'll sit there and just stay in suffering in silence. Well, I'm encouraging you to reach out. If not through here, take a look below this video and below any one of the videos. There's a whole list of ways of getting a hold of me. Okay. Now, when I'm dealing with people, to be blunt about it, I literally prefer dealing with video, but I only use Skype or Messenger on Facebook. Okay. I don't have any other method. If I knew how to set up for YouTube for a direct conference, I would. Okay, but I don't. So those are the only two ways. And so many people go, well, do you have WhatsApp or something else? And the answer to it is, I'm not doing it that way. Yeah, Carl's just asked, you switch off your Wi-Fi when not using it at night? No. The only time that my Wi-Fi goes down is if it collapses or if there's some sort of a power failure. But I myself leave it run. Okay. So yeah, if you've got a question, I presume where this is going. If you've got a question that comes to mind, and it's at a time when I'm not online, or maybe it shows that I am online, I just walked away. I've been known to pass out at my computer. Okay, but I leave it run. So if you leave a message, it doesn't matter what time it is. Okay, I tend to look back at them. Okay, but that's why I say use the links below. The easiest one to get a message to me via email. If you're looking at email, the best one to use is Inner Voice Enterprises at yahoo.ca. That's from the email standpoint. It's the easiest way to do it. Where are we here? Want this one because it works easier. I'm just going to type my email address in here. Inner Voice Enterprises. Yeah. Tell you what, have a stroke and then see how easy it is to type. It's not fun. Move that out of the way. We have Inner Voice Enterprises at yahoo.ca. That is the best email to get a message to me on because that's the one I go into regularly. My personal email, not so much. Okay. That one, or you can find me on, you can drop a message in any one of them. Skype is another one, or Facebook you can find me on. Okay. But absolutely, if you have a question, drop me a line. I will do my best to get back to you as soon as I can. And considering I live in my office most of the time, Like, because of the fact I do this and I never edit my videos, I just don't. I make sure that the date is right on them and post them as is. Fortunately, as it turns out, with these videos, with the live stream, they post automatically. Okay. But I'm usually working in the office, considering I'm in the process of writing, I think, 32 books right now. I think I should probably go and figure that out again. Right. Just to simply double check and make sure I got the right count. But I know many people have questions that they don't desire the world to know they're asking the questions. Okay. However, I look at it this way. You know, I'm just, you take a look at the people in the chat room. Now, I use my real name in the chat room. In some chat rooms, you'll find me listed as Inner Voice Enterprises. And how that goes about, I don't know. Okay. I simply go with my own name. I was asked when I was working at live psychic fairs why I don't use a different name. And I'm like, because I'm not lying to anybody to make anybody feel better. This is the way I am. And that's just the way it goes. Okay. So if you're looking for me, I'm not that hard to find. And I've been asked, well, aren't you worried about the government tracking you down? And I'm thinking, before Donald Trump got into office, he had a dossier on me. He had a complete dossier on me already. Okay. And the CIA showed up on my doorstep in Kelowna looking for me by name. So I figure the government already knows who I am. Now, that's both from the States and I'm in Canada, and you can bet they've got just as much information. Okay. If not more. I just don't care. Okay. The way I figure it, as long as I don't get tortured, I'm going to die sooner or later. But I've got no interest, and I encourage people very strongly to work within the legal system that is available. Okay, it's not the best. It's twisted in all sorts of ways. But I have this same conversation with many of the off-worlders. And I will tell you, the Elfid race, even though they are a lot older than humans, are still caught up with this idea of trying to overthrow their own governments and what have you periodically. And I will still stand there and tell them it's a bad idea. You want to see what happens when a government is overturned? I believe it was George Orwell wrote a story called Animal Farm. Now, I think it was George Orwell, but I know the story. The book was called Animal Farm. If you ever want to see what happens when a government is overthrown, read that book. Okay, because all that happens is you get a staggering amount of chaos to start with. And then whoever overthrew the government puts in a new government based on the same kinds of teachings. Okay, it doesn't work well. And this is why I tell people, and why especially on my YouTube vlogs, the ones I try and put out daily, that working together, we can make this a better world for virtually everybody. The hybridization program is not it's not an assault mechanism. It's not a mechanism to take over anything. Okay. It is strictly a system that is being used. Okay. It is simply a scientific approach. And that's something that humans do all the time. Okay. And yeah, scientists are getting better at it. They're figuring out certain things that are kind of necessary. Okay. The hardest part in all of this is getting people to understand that no matter what situation brought you to where you are, the way you are is a direct result of your past. And you cannot change the past anyway. So the value you have, the value you bring is what you bring here. Okay, what is in your heart, the way you treat other people. That's where your value really shines. Okay, and changing society to a more effective method is going to take some time. It's going to take effort on all people's parts. And yes, in time, the off-worlders will absolutely show themselves in in a more viable fashion. Okay. And one day I'll get into the idea as to why I ended up in the situation I am with them. Because I don't only work as a consultant for humans. I work as a consultant for the consortium. Okay. Now, am I on the council of the consortium? No. Have I seen certain things of theirs? I actually talked to one of their military people about the whole concept that humans have about fearing that the Greys are coming down, or somebody else are trying to infiltrate our planet and trying to take Earth away because they're losing theirs. And the layout for it by the military advisor that I talked to was very simple. If they were going to do that, and the Greys have the capacity to do this as well, if they were going to do that, the war would be over before mankind ever got a word out that it was started. The people would not even have a chance. Nobody on Earth would have a chance to pick up a phone or pick up a cell phone and say, help, we're being attacked. Because every electronic component on the planet that was already built, not just the ones that are already formed into viable systems. I'm talking everything: communication, technology, all of the medical services, all the automated systems in the hospitals would just cease to exist. You wouldn't get a phone call out. Okay. And shortly thereafter, the war would be over because mankind is not that far evolved. Now, the fact that these guys still have weapons of this capacity tells you that they are not as spiritually evolved as they like people to think. Okay, the Nordics were a prime example. When they got to Earth, people looked at them as though they were gods, and they took advantage of it. And for years, they were considered gods, right? And they came and went as they pleased, and people just bowed down to them. But the Nordics looked at it and went, well, if you want to call me a god, knock yourself out. And sure, I'll take your stuff for free. Okay, it wasn't until centuries later that the consortium pulled into the area and went, guys, you're not gods. Okay, time for you to go home and think about what you've done. Now, that said, before anybody jumps on that with cleats and a baseball bat, do I know for an absolute certainty in my mind, regardless of what you call him, okay, whether you call him God, Allah, Buddha, Source, whatever, doesn't matter what name. Does he exist? The answer is yes. Do the Greys believe in a God? The answer is yes. Okay, they absolutely do. And the reality of it is that are people inspired by a higher entity to do better? The answer is, of course. Take a look at your own kids. They see you as a more evolved form, and they look to you. Most kids look to their parents for some sort of guidance, some sort of encouragement, some sort of an idea of, are we doing this right? Greys have the same thing. Okay, and the hybridization program is constantly being tweaked to make it more effective, less invasive, and less frightening for the abductees. And yes, the Greys actually do care whether or not you're afraid. Okay, they understand the fear all too well. But they can't do much about the fear if they can't figure out how to bypass it. So for the time being, they do take the samples, but they cover the memory with memories that are easy for them to access and easy for humans to process. And hopefully, and it's literally a hope on their part, if we put this image in your head and we make that the focal point, you'll just forget about everything else. The unfortunate part is humans don't forget that well. Their recall gets shot to pieces, but their memory is absolutely on the money. And this is something the Greys have not been able to compensate for. Okay, that's just the reality of it. But I know some of you are going to have questions. Right now, and I'll be certain of it. Right now, I'm seriously considering. Somebody asked me to talk about Atlantis, and as it stands right now, that's what I'm planning on for next week. I've got a number of different topics here, and if you've got a topic, because I plan them out on a Saturday and Sunday, I will be talking about the same thing. Okay. Will it be a repeat? No, because I don't rehearse, I don't modify. You know. Oh, well, thank you very much. Nightmare. Nightmare has just piped up. She said that was me. Well, that settles it then. Next week, next weekend on Saturday and Sunday. Saturday between 8 a.m. and 10 p.m. and 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. and 10 a.m. Try that in English. 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. and Sunday from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. I will be discussing Atlantis. Okay. Like I said, I will do my best to get to the topics that you guys ask about. Okay, I've got other topics that I've got listed that I'm going to get to, but I will use those as fillers, as it were, if I don't have one to go with. This is directly for you, Nightmare. If you've got any questions that are specific that you want and that you would like me to tangle with, absolutely ask, and I will do my best to let you know. Like I will do my best to cover it during the video, during the live stream. There, I'm stumbling over that really bad. Which, in case you hadn't noticed, is probably because this has been running solid. Right now, we're approaching the 2-hour mark. Okay. And YJ has just caught in. YJ, nice to see you. Okay. The end game, YJ. The end game for the hybridization program is very simple. They are using it to literally build cultural interpreters to be able to thereby provide the Galactic Consortium itself with a translation ability to actually carry on the negotiations and carry on the evolution of the consortium, thereby opening the doors. In the long run, the hybridization program will facilitate the human race being brought into the consortium in a full-scale capacity. Okay, it won't be for a number of years in all likelihood, because mankind has a couple of hiccups that they've got to deal with. But by putting the hybridization program together and placing hybrids, assigning hybrids to the planet to start talking to the other people, that is absolutely correct. YJ's just asked, is that why they need human DNA capable of empathy? The answer is yes. Until the Greys can create a hybrid that does not carry with it the massive fear that most humans carry, but still has the empathic resonance to be able to interact safely with the other races. And the Greys aren't just doing this with humans and Greys. They're doing with humans and Pleiadians, Rosasians, various different races. But the reason for it is because they've got to have humans capable of interacting, human hybrids capable of understanding both cultures and the necessity for bringing it all together. See, here's the thing that most people don't realize, and this is a very, very long game. When a solar system starts to die, okay, what the consortium does is it brings in rescue ships to save what people it can. Now, this is why you end up with a lot of spacefaring stragglers, okay, or nomads from various races, because of the fact their solar system, because stars die, Caborans do actually end up dying. Caborans, by the way, are the planet you're on. Okay, that one's a real complicated one there. But there's Carl's just asking, how can you tell if your family is a hybrid race? Okay. And there's a couple of ways. You look at medical. Okay, take a look at the medical side of it. Is there medical abnormal in a viable way from standard humans? Is their dietary tract a whole lot different than what your average human is? Okay, do they have abilities that go beyond standard human psychic ability? Standard being, when you look at precognition, empathy, telepathy, these are things that humans themselves have. Okay, but if a child in your family is capable of physically manifesting something, okay, they may either be a hybrid or just an extremely hyper evolved human. There's no 100% way of doing it because hybridization, human technology will not detect a hybrid via DNA. Okay. And yes, I like YJ says, we are a fascinating vessel, aren't we? Like a highly refined metal, only genetic. Very much the case. And just like a highly refined metal, genetically, every cell in the human body can be modified. It can be programmed to do something else. Okay. This is why you end up with people capable of doing absolutely bizarre things. I read somewhere, somebody calculated it out, that if a human could take their body and get all of the muscles and all the cells to work in tandem, they could lift 25 ton. Okay. Now, I do not know the math behind it, and I'm not overly concerned about looking for it. But this is just simply some of what evolution will provide. Okay. Now, have humans been helped in the past? In a way, the answer is yes. Okay. The whole connection between hybridization or evolution, creation as compared to evolution, is combined. That depending, Carl's asking, do we need more red blood cells than white? They both have their own purpose. The problem with too many white cells, as near as I understand it, and I'm by no means a medical doctor, but my understanding is if you've got too many white cells, what'll happen is twofold. First, you've only got so much room to work with, and you require a real delicate balance because the red ones carry the oxygen and the nutrients to the rest of the body. The white ones fight off disease. Well, here's the problem if your white blood cell goes up. Okay, if it goes up too high, what's happening in counterbalance is your red blood cell count goes down. Net result, because the oxygen is not getting to the different organs, they will start to atrophy, they will start to get disease. Net result, the extended white cells will start producing more and come out to finish the job. So it's not a question of more red cells than white. It's a question of a very delicate balance because you've actually got three components that they haven't figured out yet. Okay, they've got the red blood cells and you've got the white blood cells. But traveling through that same system is a set of null cells. Neither red nor white. That all they are there for is to provide a carrying vessel to get the different cells. But you absolutely, where it comes to red and white, you've got to have a balanced amount. Otherwise, the system will crash. And this is why when we start talking about the way things evolved, okay, when we start looking at that, it's a very intricate balance. And when you compare the balance in the human body to the balance on Earth and the balance in the universe around us, the similarities are mind-boggling. Okay. And this is part of why I say we are all connected. Now, the reality of it is I'm going to bring this to a close. We're over the 2-hour mark here. Okay. I will be back again. I will still be working with the video, with the vlogs. And absolutely, if you've got a question, absolutely, Carl, it is like a balance between the brain and the heart. Okay, you're walking a very fine line. Now, the funny thing with the brain and heart, okay, when your heart and your head are in conflict, follow your heart, but use your head to get there. Think before you jump on it. Okay, if you've got questions, absolutely drop me a line, either in the comments below or in any one of the connections that are available, and I will do my best to get back to you on it. Okay. I mean, that would be the biggest issue from that end. And like I said, Nightmare, if you've got a topic, specifically you, and matter of fact, it applies to everybody, but if you've got a question about anything where it comes to into the issue of, when it comes to the issue of Atlantis, if you've got any area at all that you're concerned with or that you're curious about, absolutely drop me a line in one of the contact points below. But next week, I will be dealing with Atlantis. Okay. And that one you ought to find absolutely wonderful. It was a joy walking those halls. I'm so glad you managed to catch us here, YJ. I mean, people keep telling me that we should think outside the box. I'm still trying to figure out where the box is. Excellent, Carl. I believe I dropped a message for you regarding that. He's looking for copiers to get his paintings done. And I'll tell you, Carl, I wish you the best of luck with it. Okay. It'll be fascinating to see you reach the potential that you can get to. Yeah, it's one of the drawbacks of me only being able to do it. This is why I'm really happy. As soon as I hang this up, it'll get posted right away. I don't have to do anything because I never edit it anyway. But I could go back and forth for hours here, which would get me in trouble. But it'd be trouble with me. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Love the questions. And quite frankly, the more questions I have, the easier it is for me to work. Okay, and for me to get things accomplished. Anyway, people, thank you so much for joining me. Have yourselves a great night. And for pity's sakes, do stay positive.